I'll call the meeting, November 17, 2020 meeting of the Raleigh Historic Development Commission to order. And I'll ask the staff to call the roll.
Good morning, Tanya Tully here. Nick Fountain.
Here.
Kay Webb.
Here.
Katie Pate.
Here.
Travis Bailey is not here yet. He's going to be calling in once we get that going. Sorry, lost where it was. Ian Dunn.
Here.
Vershay Height.
Here.
Heather Leah.
Here.
Harold Millette. Janine McAuliffe.
Here.
John Reese. Susan Singer.
Here.
Gaston Williams.
I saw him wave, so he's on. And with that, I'll move to the consent items, and I'll ask for a motion to approve the agenda. Does anybody have any corrections or changes to it? All right, then Janine McAuliffe moves to approve the agenda. Second from Kay Webb. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye. Raise your hand. All right, I saw hands from Janine, Katie, Kay, Ian, Heather, and Gaston. Okay, Susan's got her camera on now. And so that now we'll move to approval of the minutes. I hope you all had an opportunity to look at the October 20 minutes that were attached to the agenda. And are there any questions, corrections on the minutes of last month? If not, I'll call for a motion to approve the minutes of October, and Kay Webb makes that motion, and Vershay Height seconds the motion. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye. Raise your hand. And so that motion carries. And again, I saw hands from Gaston, Ian, Heather, Katie, Kay, Janine, Susan, and Vershay. So now we'll move to the first item of business is the question of the UDO change from City Council. Tanya, do you want to talk about that?
Yes, sir. There was a text change that went into effect a week or so ago regarding subdivisions in the Unified Development Ordinance. As y'all may recall, up until now, subdivisions in historic overlay districts and within Raleigh historic landmarks, RHDC's role was to review and make a recommendation, but then it went to City Council where they would make an approval in a quasi-judicial evidentiary hearing. As part of the city's trying to move quasi-judicial hearings away from City Council, except for those they deem really necessary, they made this particular text change, which moves the final decision on subdivisions in HODs and landmarks to RHDC. It still would be in a quasi-judicial evidentiary hearing, but after going through all of the other code-related reviews, having to do with, stormwater, transportation, all of the other normal departmental reviews, the final decision will be up to RHDC based on a, congruity standpoint with the character of the historic district or landmark. It is staff's recommendation until you get the opportunity, well, assuming you agree with us, until you get an opportunity to change the bylaws, that all subdivisions automatically be referred, that y'all make a policy that subdivisions get referred to the COA committee, because that is your body that is already set up to hold quasi-judicial evidentiary hearings. And and one, just before I forget, I want to add that text change also removes the Board of Adjustment from appeals of certificates of appropriateness from, I think, November 9th when it went into effect. Moving forward, applications filed for COAs, decisions made will go straight to Wake County Superior Court and not the Board of Adjustment. Anyway, back up to the subdivisions. So we do have a case on the agenda.
Hold on a second.
Yes, sir.
Understand what was said regarding how we might want to handle these
Okay.
change subdivisions. And we're going to come up with one right now at 801 North Bloodworth, but everybody understand that it may be that we want to route those to the COA, and you all may have read the staff comments on this on 801 Bloodworth to that effect. Anybody got any question on that? Do you all want to, you heard staff's comment about setting a policy that we would more or less automatically refer to the COA committee. Are y'all comfortable with that? Particularly those of you that are not on the COA committee. Now, what we can do is when they come through, we can make sure everybody's aware of it so there's opportunity for everybody to participate if there's a need. But otherwise, I think without objection or comment, Tanya, we'll go with that approach as a procedural matter to move these things to COA. And that probably helps the applicant, maybe saves a little time for them, and we can then move those forward. Okay, all right, so next matter.
Well, Nick, may I get a vote from y'all in that regard?
Okay, I was doing it without objection, but that's okay. So we'll treat that as a motion from Gaston Williams that in the future that applications for subdivision change or approval go to the COA committee instead of being discussed in detail here. So that's a motion, and I need a second to that motion. Katie Pate moves second the motion. Any discussion? All in favor say aye, raise your hand. And I see hands from Kelly, Verche, Janine, Katie, Susan, Ian, Heather, and Gaston, and I vote aye also. So that carries without objection. So the next matter is 801 North Bloodworth Street, a subdivision. And so then, could we have, Tanya, a little bit of discussion about what this is about? And I know you have a recommendation that it go to COA, but
Nick,
where they can see what we got. Yeah.
Nick, we're not actually prepared to discuss it at all. If you choose not to send it to COA, then we need to, because it has to be heard in a quasi-judicial evidentiary hearing, we have not done any notification. We would not have. So if you don't want to send it to COA, then we have to put it on another agenda and do all the notification.
No, that's fine. Based on the motion we just passed, then, unless there's objection from anybody, we just automatically refer 801 Bloodworth Street to the COA committee. And I see nods. Everybody understands. So we move that forward that way. And now we come to South Bloodworth Street, 501, 7, 11, and 13. South Bloodworth Street, that's a rezoning case. And would staff explain what this is about? And then I'll get to the speakers, and I do have the list on you. Yeah.
We need Colette. Oh, there she goes. We need Colette unmuted, please.
Hi, everyone. This is Colette. So as Nick just mentioned, we have a rezoning case for 501, 507, 511, and 513 South Bloodworth Street. It is case number Z4820. It's in the East Raleigh South Park National Register District and directly across the street from the Prince Hall District. We have prepared a staff memo that reviews the application and any conditions that the applicant provided. We also have Ira Mabel on hand. He is the planner for the case, and he is prepared to make a presentation on the location and merits of the rezoning.
Okay, I think what we'll do then, Ira, is I'll hear from you then, and then I'll come back to hear from the applicants. And I guess when I do that, I'll hear from Tom Johnson, and then we'll see if the other folks that are listed want to be heard also. So Ira, if you'll go ahead, that'll be good.
All right. Good morning, everybody. Ira Mabel from Planning and Development. So this request is for 4 properties on Bloodworth Street on the east side there. You can see in the current zoning, there are two districts. There's that pink color and the blue color. And so that'll come into play when we talk about the conditions already on the site. And you can also see the hash line on the other side of the street on top of the sort of maroon colored DX district. That is the HOD. So this is not in an HOD, but it is across the street from properties in an HOD. So next slide, please. I do have a handful of slides. I'll rifle through them pretty quick, Tanya. This is just a bigger picture of the zoning map. Sort of surrounded by a PD. So the site is roughly halfway on the diagonal between Red Hat and Chavis, so in the southeast portion of downtown. And then the next slide is a little bit of a closer view. You can see 4 structures currently on the site. I'll go into pictures. And pretty close to the Shaw University student housing there, if you're familiar with that. So there are three houses. The ones that are clearly visible in the photos labeled 1 and 2 are in the NX, so the sort of pink color zoning district when I talk about those conditions. And then the one that you can see most clearly on number 3 is not. All single family except for the one with the red doors that is currently a duplex. So 5 units total. It's just an outline of the National Register District, so the East Raleigh South Park Historic District sort of meanders around as part of downtown and Southeast Raleigh. So the request currently we're estimating could be 11 units on the site. So presuming that the first 3 houses were all duplexes and then the 4th one was totally redeveloped. And they are requesting uniform zoning RX3. So currently commercial uses are allowed. So the OX is office mixed use and the NX is neighborhood mixed use. Both of those are commercial districts. And so uniform zoning RX3 would allow like apartment buildings essentially, and very few non-residential uses. Next slide. So these are the conditions currently in one of the districts that I pulled that I thought might be of interest to this committee. The first being by far the most relevant, which is that those first 3 houses, the northern 3, there's a condition that they will not be demolished. And then there are some other conditions related to the nature of the site. So which certain trees should be protected. That's above and beyond the city code that requires tree protection. And then a condition about lighting and then sidewalks compliant to the master plan. So these will all be removed. There are no conditions this included with this request. It's a general use case. So basically anything permitted in the UDO under the RX, the residential mixed use 3-story zoning would be allowed. There's currently on the two zoning districts a detached frontage, which is intended to result in a detached building type. So these are the rules for that. It doesn't strongly, the current incarnation of the detached frontage doesn't force you to do. There are ways to not. Well, I think that's all I want to say about the TS front. This is what's currently the frontage on the site, and the next slide is the frontage that would be included in the request, which is the urban limited. So that is intended for more urban areas. Prohibits surface parking between the building and the street, and has a build to. So there'd have to be a building within 20 feet of the property line for at least half of the width. So something similar to what the picture you'd be showing here in terms of massing, what would result here. And that is my last slide. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Are there questions of our Maple from anybody on the commission, or do you want to hear from the applicants at this point? No hands.
Question.
I didn't see anybody's hand go up or hear a voice. So I think I will hear from the applicants, and then we'll see about questions, comments, and discussion. With that, I'll turn to Tom Johnson. And Mr. Johnson, if you're the person to lead off, otherwise I'll let you guide us as to who we ought to hear from next.
Yes, I'm the one who's going to present, and I appreciate it. I'm Tom Johnson. I'm with the law firm of Williams Mullen at 301 Fayetteville Street, Suite 1700, representing the applicant in this case. I appreciate Ira's presentation, and essentially this really is predominantly a rezoning from commercial districts to residential. Because the intent is to redevelop this into residential townhomes. But I want to go through some slides. I know Ira showed some slides. I want to show some too of the houses and talk a little bit about them, the existing structures. If I go to the next slide. And this is a picture of 3 of the 4 structures, just like Ira showed, from a westerly view, showing the house as a duplex in the middle and the ones on either side. The house is a duplex is in very poor condition, so it really can't continue to function in the way it is right now. You go to the next slide. Again, this is the house on the corner. Best we can tell, it may have been built as of 1930, possibly, as best we can tell. Next slide. Again, this is the duplex that's in poor condition. May have been built approximately 1850, but we really don't know. But its condition is such that it really can't be effectively rehabilitated. The next slide. And this is the one to the right of the duplex, may be built approximately 1910. Next slide. And this is a home that's on the far end. It was moved to this lot in 2008, and we don't have any information on the age of this home. We have explored the possibility of moving this home to a city-owned site. There's been no conclusion reached on that, but there have been some initial discussions about that. Next slide. Again, we're rezoning to the RX district with the intent to redevelop this property with townhomes. The current zoning predominantly is NX and OX, which are commercial zones. Of course, there's a little small part that's R10 that again would be rezoned to RX3 UL. The intent is to construct about 10 to 12 townhomes with a maximum of 3 stories in height and consistent with the construction in the area. So we would come up with a design and have been already working on the design that would be complementary of the other similar projects in the area. The owners are, we're willing to work with the commission to document the existing properties. And as we said earlier, are willing to allow any homes that are structurally sound to be moved to city-owned lots if there's an interest in the city to do that. We've had one neighborhood meeting. Initially, we were considering rezoning this to DX5. After the neighborhood meeting and the input, we shifted to RX3. Then we have an additional neighborhood meeting that's coming up on or about December 3rd. Now that additional neighborhood meeting is required under the current rules for rezoning. But I'm happy to answer any questions you may have. Again, this is just a situation to redevelop this property and in order to add some additional density and townhomes considering its proximity to downtown. And I have with me on the call Robbie Lawson, who is the owner. He's available as well to answer any questions that may come up.
I have a question, Nick.
Who was that?
Gaston.
Okay, Gaston, go ahead.
Could you clarify for me? I'm looking at the site plan drawings from the original part of the presentation by the staff member and the three houses, and et cetera. And you just said that you're considering design elements that would match not existing houses, but new projects in the area. Is that what I interpret what you just said?
Yeah, there are various different projects. Robbie may better to speak to this. Robbie, you want to speak to the other projects if you're looking at doing the design elements? If you could unmute Robbie Lawson and let him talk about that.
Well, my question, let me clarify my question because it may not have been that clear. Are you thinking about, is the proponent considering making it consistent with the new projects in the area as opposed to the characters of the existing neighborhood?
Well, we're looking at the new projects in the area that have tried to be consistent with the neighborhood. You know, we're wanting to look definitely more traditional in terms of its look, and similar to various other townhome projects that are in this general area.
And so follow up to your offer, in that context, at some point or time, if it were appropriate, I'd like to see what you're comparing, what you're considering making it like.
Okay.
Yeah.
And we can show some designs. Again, we're in the preliminary stages, have looked at some potential designs, certainly are open to architecturally helping it fit in with some of the ones that of other properties that have been redeveloped into townhomes in this area.
Are there other questions from members of the committee to the applicants? And I think I'm going to want to hear from staff. I think there was a staff memo also. And so I'm going to want to hear from them as well. Does everybody understand? I'm not sure that I do understand the parameters of each of the zoning classifications that have been referenced. The existing, the proposed, and then the one and changed after the neighborhood meeting. Tom, can you go back through what the three zoning classifications under discussion were and what are those impacts?
Well, the current zoning is NX and OX and a little bit of R10, very, very small portion. That's some residual portion of R10. So those are the current zonings, and predominantly those are commercial zones. We're rezoning. Initially, it talked about DX zoning, which is the downtown mixed use. But after the community meeting decided to go with residential mixed use and limited these properties to 3 stories. So that's when we went to the RX3 urban limited. And the reason urban limited is because it is an urban transition area. So we proposed to do that. So that's where we ended up.
All right, I got that. Thank you for that. Let's see. So I'd like to, let's see, Susan Singer had a question, and then I want to hear from Paulette if she's the one who did the memo.
Thank you. My question isn't architectural, although I really appreciated Gaston's question on what they're going to look like. But I'm in that area a lot. I ride my bike around there a lot. And the townhouses that have gone in are definitely much higher end than the ones that are being replaced. And it looks to me like that would happen again. Is there any talk as you do this from anyone you're interacting with about what happens to affordable housing in that area? Because this may be the inappropriate time to bring that up, but that area has been affordable housing for a fairly long time. And I'm just wondering, when you build these townhouses, the ones over by Transfer are $750,000. I mean, they replaced all affordable housing. So that's my question. If this is inappropriate for this meeting, I'll drop it. But I looking at this going, well, where do those people go?
Tom, you want to respond to that?
Well, I mean, certainly these are going to be less than the target is less than the $750,000 that you were talking about near Transfer Hall. But, in terms of affordable housing, I mean, it's creating more density and more housing availability by doing this. Obviously, they'll be different because it is new construction. And obviously, the price point of these will be a little different than what's currently there. We've not had any discussions about any kind of affordable housing regarding this property at this point.
Okay. All right.
I would just suggest as a city should think about that, because it's historically part of what makes us a valuable city is that we've had a mix of housing opportunities, and affordable is relative. So I would just leave you with that comment.
I understand, and we understand that affordable is relative. It would just create more housing options within this area. It'll be different than the existing. Granted, it's not going to be single-family residential. The typically detached single-family residential will still be single-family residential, but it'll be of the townhome format, consistent with what else is in the area and in downtown, and adding additional homes to the housing stock downtown. So you're taking 4 homes and you're going to 10 to 12.
All right. Thanks for that. Colette, was it you who did the memo for staff? Good. And would you or Tanya speak to the staff's comments and review for the benefit of everybody on the line?
Yes. This is Colette. I wrote the staff memo. So in the memo, like our standard format, I reviewed the history that's included in the East Raleigh South Park National Register nomination form and how that relates to the houses. The report is focused on the first 3 since the 513. The IMF says that the structure was built in 2008. If it was moved there in 2008, that would be the same thing. But I do not have any prior history on that structure. So I'm not sure if it was historic or if it was a new construction that was moved. That's unclear. So the first 3 houses, 501, 507, and 511, are all considered contributing. The period of significance for the neighborhood is from around 1850 until 1941. 501 South Bloodworth, which is the corner property, is the oldest of the 3, or the youngest constructed of the 3, 1940. And in staff's opinion, that one appears to have very high integrity. It pretty well matches the description included in the nomination form. Both 507 and 511 South Bloodworth have definitely had some alterations. 507 is dated to potentially around 1850, and it appears mostly superficial changes, siding, windows, that sort of thing. 511 South Bloodworth is dated to pre-1900, and it has a little more substantial alterations. The most significant of those being the removal of 2 exterior end chimneys that were present previously. That was a character defining feature. So that one has probably the least integrity of the 3. The application as it stands now, no conditions are offered. No conditions that address the historical resources and any possible mitigation. There are a wide range of conditions that could be offered, from simple documentation of the structures prior to demolition to a little more substantial efforts to mitigate negative impacts. What else would you like me to elaborate on?
Specifically then, did the staff have a recommendation?
We have no official recommendation at this point. As it stands, no conditions are offered to mitigate the potential impact of zoning. So I guess take from that what you will.
Okay, I've got lots of hands going up here, and I will take them in order. I'll start with Kay Webb.
Okay, what effect, if any, would this rezoning have on the character of the National Register District?
And Kay, to whom are you directing that question?
To the staff, I'm sorry.
Sure. So this is Colette. Based on the description, what I've read, it would have certainly an impact. 507 South Bloodworth being one of the oldest properties in the neighborhood, dating to 1850. I did not go through all of the properties listed in the nomination, but it's certainly one of the earliest remaining structures in the neighborhood. 501 South Bloodworth is unique. It's not called out specifically in the nomination, but the nomination did say that there are very few 2.5-story side gable houses. And this fits that description. So that would be another loss of a unique resource.
Tanya Tully here. I'm going to step in and be a little bit more straightforward. Removal of contributing resources in the historic district would be a negative impact. And yes.
All right, so that was, Kay, does that answer your question?
Yes.
Okay, let's see, Katie, hey, did you have a hand up? Yeah. Okay, ask you, unmute yourself and ask your question.
Yes, thank you. I kind of in a similar vein as Susan's question earlier, and staff or maybe Mr. Johnson would have some more information about this, but what was the neighborhood's feelings or thoughts about this rezoning? Clearly there was some pushback if the community meeting resulted in them changing their zoning from DX5 to RX3. So I was interested if there was some more information about what the neighbors had to say. I think that we should be taking that into account for sure.
I'm happy to speak to that. The main concern by the neighbors was just that we limit the height to 3 stories and don't go above that, which is why we changed it to RX3. But other than that, they had no objection to what we were planning for the site, and actually we're supportive of it as long as we kept it to 3 stories.
Okay, and do I see that there's another neighborhood meeting scheduled on this? What was the attendance like? Do you have some more information about that?
We had very good attendance. This had a good number of all the surrounding property owners. So attendance was really good at the neighborhood meeting, a lot of active and open discussion, and really the only concern was the height. Other than that, they were supportive of putting townhomes at this site, and really we heard no objection to that. The second neighborhood meeting is just a required second neighborhood meeting. It's not for any other reason other than Ira can correct me, I think it was just because of the density that we were proposing that we needed to have the second neighborhood meeting under the rezoning rules for the city. And we right now are working on getting that in place for December the 3rd.
Okay, Janine McCullough.
Thank you. My question is about parking, actually. Can the applicant speak to the requirements for RX3 and sort of their initial thoughts on how to achieve parking requirements for this project?
I mean, in terms of RX3, we're just looking at doing 3-story townhomes at the site. 10 to 12 townhomes, would respect the setbacks and the other requirements on as Ira mentioned, under the urban limited, we would have the buildings more to the front, parking be more in the back. is our intent. There's room to put an alleyway in the back and to put parking back there. But generally, it's residential mixed use. But and you saw the density that I indicated, but that's not at all our intent to have that much density on this site. And it'd be difficult to get that much density with the setbacks we have to meet with the adjoining residential properties.
Okay, further questions? Gaston Williams?
I'm looking at pages 3 and 4 of the staff memos, particularly under the comments section and particularly of the first two. And once again, when I see these proposals, I'm almost sad because I'm not sure. I understand the pressures on the city and all this stuff, but I'm keen to see what's being proposed that reflects the neighborhood in some degree. And I noticed that 3 of the 4 buildings that you have in your presentation have porches in one form or another. I'm not sure that I have seen many modern replacement projects that have anything like a porch or any characteristics of the neighborhood they're put into, but I would be interested in at some point having items 1 and 2 of the staff comments in the comment section on bottom of page 3 addressed. I assume that the applicant would agree that they don't see any way to preserve parts of 501 South Bloodworth as existing structure, and then right now there are no other conditions placed on, we're not talking about design elements or whether there's any historical integrity or attempt to nod to the history of the area. It's just a comment. I'm sad to see that we may be replacing these with modern townhouses as opposed to townhouses that mimic at least some of the architectural features of the former neighborhood.
Well, that's some of the input we wanted. I mean, we didn't put conditions on here intentionally because we wanted to get some input and thoughts from this commission as well as the planning commission before we added some conditions. And certainly we're willing, in terms of the comments from staff, I mean, the documentation, including photographs and that sort of thing, we're certainly willing to do. We are actively looking about any of them that have the structural integrity to be able to move. We've had some discussions with the city about where there are places where these could be moved to, particularly with the 513 Bloodworth, was where those discussions focused. I don't know whether or not 501 South Bloodworth could be moved or not. The others just aren't in good enough condition to be able to do that. Including the oldest structure, as I said earlier, is in very poor condition. But in terms of the design of the property, I mean, there certainly can be some consideration to some design elements such as porches that we can look at, and happy to show some of those.
Okay, I'm going to call on Ian Dunn next, and I'll get back to Janine, and then I have a comment of my own. Ian?
You mentioned that 507, the 1850 house, you mentioned that it was not structurally capable of being moved. Do you have any sort of professional, was this analyzed professionally, or is this just an opinion, or what? I'd like to see that one at least to be attempt to be moved. I know a little bit about the history of that house, and
right.
I'd hate for it to be demolished.
Let me have the owner, Robbie Lawson, speak to that as far as what he knows about that.
Good morning, everyone. This is Robbie Lawson. Thank you so much for your time this morning. 507, I would say, would be in the worst shape out of all 4 of the houses. I'm not sure how it is attached, if it's on a slab or if there's something underneath it. We have not had it professionally reviewed to see if that can be moved by any means, but I don't see a lot of value with regard to someone being able to live in there again. So it's definitely the one that's in the worst shape out of the 4. If that helps, or if you have any specific questions, I'll be happy to answer.
Well, I'll step in here. To me, 507, it would be really unfortunate to knock down an 1850 structure. I don't know what the history of that is, but and I don't know if that would have been African American at the time or not, but regardless, it's that's a long time back, and the architectural form of it is classic, I think, for that area, and it certainly looks like it's not on a slab, and it ought to be able to put a couple beams under there and move it. So to me, I'm going to have trouble supporting this. A, because of staff's comments, and B, because I'm particularly concerned about losing that structure. The one on the corner of the brick is of concern, but it may be perverse to the applicants, but I'm actually more concerned about the second one than I am the one on the corner myself. But I also applaud Gaston's comments about rethinking this with a neighborly design with front porches and the like to make this more urban friendly, I suppose you'd say, rather than having it a blank to the street, parking in the back, no real connection to the neighborhood or the sidewalk or whatever. So those are just some quick off the top ones from me. Let's see. I think Janine, you had your hand up again a minute ago.
I did, thank you. I just wanted, maybe this is a question for staff to just give some guidance here, but I'm curious, just with this not being in a historic district, what is our involvement in this project beyond the rezoning, and would it come around for a COA?
Well, let me, first of all, it's in a historic district, but it's a National Register district and not a local historic overlay district that would, because those automatically go to COA, and the National Register ones, I think, just use the carrot of tax credits, but otherwise they're largely honorary. I think that's right. And Tanya or Colette, if you all want to supplement what I said, please do.
Hey, Nick, this is Colette. So you're correct. There would be no COA for this project. The applicant mentioned that they wanted to get feedback from you guys and Planning Commission prior to adding conditions. So if you would like to give them that opportunity, I think that the presentation said that they would go to Planning Commission on December 8th, and then they could have the option to return to the next business meeting with any conditions they've considered in order to maybe respond to some of your comments.
I think it would be useful to give them an opportunity to hear our comments and to respond before we take a vote on it. That's just my reaction to that. But let's hear from everybody else. Heather, you had your hand up.
I had a comment, and I'm not as familiar with the history of this neighborhood, but kind of piggybacking on what I've heard a few other people talk about, I am concerned about if historically this has been a place where there's been affordable housing, if historically this has been a place with a lot of African American history in Raleigh, I feel like almost anything we put in there isn't going to fit with the character of the neighborhood, especially if it's been affordable housing, and then we put in something that's completely unaffordable. I'm talking about the historic character of the neighborhood, but also kind of the social and cultural, economic character of the neighborhood. I just don't want us to kind of go in and gentrify it, basically. So I had those comments. I'd love to hear if you guys have a response to that. Again, this is coming from not having done, a lot of background research on this particular piece of history, but it's just a concern that's there.
Okay, John Reese. John Reese, you can unmute yourself and we can hear from you. Now.
Are we there?
I think he froze.
Can you hear me now? Hello?
All right.
This is Aaron. I can actually hear John very, very faintly, but not enough to hear what he's saying.
I can hear him faintly too.
I'm not hearing him at all. All right, he gave up. Other questions or comments from the rest of you? So Katie Peck.
Yeah, I'll just echo the sentiment that Heather just put forward. I think that's something that we need to be conscious of, and I would like to hear if the applicant has anything further to say about that.
All right, before I do that, to the applicants, I'm thinking about seeing if somebody wants to make a motion to defer this to the December meeting, which would give an opportunity for you guys to take all this into account and decide what you thought before we voted up or down on the rezoning. But I'd love to hear from the applicants as we think about how to move from here.
We're fine to get, because with the input and to be able to address the input would be fine to having this go to the December meeting. We'd still proceed to Planning Commission on December 8th, as I think we need to do that because of deadlines, but we'd come back for input to this committee at the December meeting. And what I'm hearing, where there was some expression of the affordable part, I mean, I got that. You wanted some idea of the design and how it would be done in a way to be compatible with the neighborhood. And then to be able to document and or find ways to potentially preserve the existing homes if that's possible. And that's what those are the three things I'm hearing from this committee. So I just want to make sure I've got those down, if I'm accurate in that.
Yeah, I think you're accurate in the, and I'll supplement by saying you discussed the possible relocation of the fourth one.
Right.
But in the discussions here, it's numbers 1 and 2 that draw the most attention.
Okay.
Actually, but before we move, and you haven't said that, Versailles Height had a hand up, and I don't think we've heard from her.
Okay.
Yeah, I would echo the sentiments of Heather and Katie. I would also,
speak up, if you will.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay. I would echo the sentiments of Heather and Katie. I also would like, I guess, in the summary list that the owner gave or the representation gave, I would like to see a little bit more information, and if you have it, about the community meeting that you held. It's referred to, and maybe this is, just because we didn't ask the question yet, but you referred to it in a kind of general way. So I would be curious about, I guess a little bit more detail about what was discussed and even the attendance that you had, and where that attendance lived, or where is that representation coming from? Had a lot of community meetings in the past for projects, and sometimes the attendance is 2 people. So it's important that we kind of know what that information looks like too when making this decision.
So Tom, I think what Versailles is saying or alluding to is the question: are the people that showed up for the neighborhood meetings essentially investors in neighboring property, or are they longtime residents or occupants of affordable housing, or what sort of mix of comment were you likely to get?
Well, these were residents of the area, so these were not investors. They were active residents in the area. I recall, I don't have it right in front of me, but it was about 10 to 12 people, so it wasn't a small amount whatsoever.
Okay.
And so we had good active participation, good active discussion. These were residents of the area. The information is part of the record in terms of the application, since we had to submit that, and certainly that can be pulled so far as who those attendees were and the discussion that occurred. But it was not investors or anything like that. It was actual residents. Okay. And their concern is they did not want it taller than 3 stories, and so we went with that, and we decided, because we intended to do residential, just to pull back and just make it a residential district.
Okay. This is agreeable. The planning staff, if I may, also before we move on, we do require a record of the meeting. So the meeting that has occurred already is required before an applicant can submit a petition. So when they're talking about like changing the zoning condition, all that happened before we had an actual petition submitted to the city. And I believe Colette did include the full application in the board docs backup. So the record of attendance, the names and addresses of the attendees, and a summary of the discussion, which in this case is actually relatively detailed for these types of applications. And the same is true for the second. They are required to have a second neighborhood meeting because they did meet the criteria for that. So they will have to also submit a similar record of attendance and summary of topics discussed.
All right.
But that is I do see that in board docs, in your board docs packet, if you would like to see it.
Thanks for that. So the rest of us need to remember to dig a little deeper into board docs. But sometimes we don't know the question we're going to have till we get into it. I got two other hands up, and I'll get those comments, and then we'll see about what action needs to be taken for today. So Gaston Williams first, and then John Reese again.
Just very, very quick. Residents in the area attending meetings, I kind of like some help with the staff taking the list and see if these are residents of existing new built structures or whether they're existing older houses. Because in my work with Overland Village, when we survey the new residents, they're okay with everything being 3 and 4 stories tall because that's what they're living in, as opposed to the people who have been living there since 3 generations and they don't come to the meetings. And so what happens when we approve these things is they blow up eventually because we haven't drawn into the process the whole community. I'm not making any comment about anything that's been represented in this meeting, but that's the reality is 24 people out of 120 people that live in the area, it may not be a representative sample of who actually lives there.
And that's a challenge, and that's a challenge for everyone. It's not a criticism of anyone.
No, I'm just observing that we have to be careful because occasions where things have gotten dicey, I guess, or, we had to defend our actions or recommendations is because of little little lack of attention to this kind of detail, getting a voice from a broader community.
All right. Thanks
Well,
for
I think
that.
that's a good point. I'm curious on that note. How are these meetings advertised?
We have to notify the residents within the area. We have a list of those that are notified within, I believe it's 1,000 feet of the property. They were notified by letter, including the link to the Zoom meeting. So they were all advertised. The people that attended, as I recall, I think predominantly they're all in regular single-family dwellings in the area. And of course, one of the attendees and one of the neighboring property owners is the current chair of the Planning Commission, Matt Tomasulo. So he was there and in attendance, as were others. But these, it's not like they live in different types of properties. Most of these, as I recall, are single-family dwellings.
Thank you. John Reese had a question.
I don't know. Can you all hear me now?
No.
You can? Can you? Hello?
John, this is Erin. You're very faint. If I turn you up to 100%, I could maybe relay.
The issue is I'm on a...
Yeah. Aaron, if you can relay what he said, that's helpful. I'm not getting any of his.
Okay.
Hey, everybody be very quiet. John, go ahead.
I apologize. I'm on my iPhone. Will you please tell them that? Can you hear me now?
I can hear you. Go ahead.
Okay. Please tell everybody I'm on my iPhone, which is screwed up because I stuck some wood in the speaker. Anyway. The question I've got is based on sustainability. The houses that you've got there are obviously old growth wood. I'm very concerned about that kind of just waste going to just the landfill. The question is relative to, I didn't hear anybody say from your team that these things have been professionally evaluated based on the structural issues or any other kinds of sustainability things that could actually, of what they could be if there was a professional out there who could actually verify their structural and potential condition.
All right, so I believe I heard John say that he's on his iPhone and the speakers are not functioning properly, so he apologizes. But his question is regarding sustainability. Some of these structures are built predominantly with old growth wood that he's concerned may be going to the landfill. And he didn't hear anything from the applicants regarding professionally evaluated structural issues on the site. He's curious if that could be a potential condition to the application.
Again, these have not to this point been professionally evaluated. Don't know as far as the content of the structures. We could not comment on that at this time. We just don't know. Just trying to be honest with you. We just haven't had a professional evaluation, nor do I know what kind of construction is in the current homes.
My personal comment is that they need to be.
Mr. Chairman, is a motion in order?
You want to make one?
I move that we table this to the next, to the December meeting. Is that, yeah, we do have one in December. To the December meeting, and that the sum and the substance of our concerns be expressed to the applicant, and see if we can get some clarification on the, I think there's about 5 or 6 points that have been raised. And if anybody has any trouble, I'm sure Nick has notes, but the staff has probably been making notes. The concerns we have be addressed specifically.
All right, thank you for that. There's a motion from Gaston Williams. There's a second from Travis Bailey. So now I'll turn to discussion. Brashay Height had discussion.
Yeah, I just have one more thing to, I guess, be considered or be asked. I know you talk about a 3-story height, but it is, just looking at the character of the neighborhood, it looks like even on the Prince Hall side of things, you know, there's 2 stories is kind of the max. And then I noticed that in the development that occurred across the street, just north of yours, the street frontage is actually 2 stories on that new development, and then kind of 3 stories as it goes backwards off of Bloodworth Street. So just wondering if that's been considered, because having a whole full story over the historic neighborhood could not be great for the character of it.
All right, thanks for that. Susan Singer, did you have anything else before we any discussion on the motion?
I just quickly wanted to say I've had experience, not as an architect and certainly not on a commission like this, but I've had experience with neighborhoods being invited to meetings. And I think the outreach to the community is generally supported by the people who already live there and understand the dynamic of the gentrification. And I think we as a committee need to be extremely sensitive to that, and possibly we could take this as a conversation separately for us to come to an opinion on how do we preserve the historic character and the affordable housing with development in mind. And that's, I kind of want to just leave it at that. And I will support wherever the commission wants to go.
Thank you for that, though. But Susan, there is notification with respect to our meetings, not of the same degree of detail as went to the application, but our meetings are all public, and there is notice with respect to everything we're doing anyway. So with that, we had a motion from Gaston to defer to December. Travis Bailey seconded the motion. Is there further discussion? Is everybody prepared to move on the motion? All right, all in favor say aye or raise your hand. And all of the hands went up, and that would include Travis, Brashay, Kay, Susan, Katie, Heather, Ian, Janine, John, Gaston, and I will support the motion also. So that carries unanimously. And just for the record, Tanya, what is the date of the December meeting?
December 15th.
All right, so 12/15, I'll say to the applicants, we'll get this addressed by this body. So thank you all for coming, and we'll no doubt talk again. So with that, we'll move to the next items on the agenda, and that is certified local government duties. And we have a landmark designation application for Hillcrest Cemetery, and I'd call on staff to explain that of that matter.
Hello, Tanya Tully here. We have the, I'm just going to cover them both at the same time. We have the applications for Hillcrest Cemetery and McAdams House. They were before you earlier, a couple months ago. They have been to the City Council and the joint public hearing that most of y'all attended. And then they have been back to the research committee. There were minor changes to each of the applications based on comments from the State Historic Preservation Office. However, the bulk is the same from what you saw before. And now we're on the last step of the process, which I will let Ian handle now.
I was just thinking we need to hear from Ian on this.
So, like Tanya said, we discussed it at the research meeting, and we decided to bring it to this meeting, and I'll make that motion if that's the right thing to do at this time, Tanya. Is that right?
I'm ready. I'm ready for the motion, but I will say to everyone that I think I think our discussions at the earlier meeting were cursory because we knew it was coming back. If you won't have any more discussion about it, then we can certainly do that here. If your view generally is it's a no-brainer and the research committee and staff are doing a good job, then we just keep moving. So, all right, Ian, why don't you go ahead with your motion?
The research committee has reviewed and discussed the comments on the McAdams House and Hillcrest Cemetery. On behalf of the committee, I move that the RHDC recommend that City Council adopt the draft ordinances designating these two properties as Raleigh historic landmarks.
Is there, let's see, coming from a committee, I don't think it has to have a second. If it needs one, John Reese seconded. With that, any discussion? No discussion. All in favor say aye and raise your hand. All right, the motion carries. Susan Singer, I can't see you, but it carries by overwhelming majority. All the names that I've been reeling off except for Susan, and I'll vote for it as well. So that carries. And we'll move to action items, and that item is the 2021 meeting schedule. Tanya, you want to talk about that?
I don't have much to say about that other than take a look. If you agree, please vote. There were not any meetings that I needed to shift due to holidays this year. Just the only thing that's strange, it would be the executive committee meeting for the first couple of months, meeting earlier than usual, because I assume we'll still be doing this in a remote fashion. And I will adjust that month by month accordingly until we get back to.
And when she says earlier, I don't think she means in darkness. I think she just means earlier in the month.
Oh yeah, earlier in the month. No, please, let's not meet earlier than 7:30 in the morning.
Exactly. Okay, so the idea here is we need to approve the schedule, and I think we can approve the schedule, and if something's up, we have to change it, then with enough advance notice, we can still move something. So is there a motion to approve the meeting schedule for 2021? Heather makes that motion, and Travis seconded the motion. In discussion, all in favor say aye, raise your hand. Motion carries unanimously. And so we have that meeting scheduled. Next item for discussion is annual retreat. And so Tanya, you want to talk about that?
I just want to thank everybody for responding to the doodle poll. The date that had most of you available is January 25th, 5:00 p.m. I will work with the executive committee to, set up the agenda, determine, how much time we need. and we'll find out if we are able to meet in person at that time or not. We'll have to play that by ear. If you have any particular items you want for me to bring to the executive committee, you can let me know now, or send an email. Just as a reminder, the annual retreat is the time for y'all to discuss. We'll go over past work items in the last year you've completed, look at what you want to do in the next year, and this is the sort of the guiding direction for what you want the commission to be focusing on in the next year and a half or so.
So we would talk about goals and dreams, and we would talk about patting ourselves on the back for whatever we have accomplished, and then if there are festering problems that we ought to discuss, then whether it's affordable housing, whether it's how to handle the zoning thing, or anything else on your mind, then we could send an email or something so we can make sure we make enough time to do the things that ought to be done with it. Okay? All right. Committee reports. Anything else from research? What do y'all got going, Ian?
Majority of our meeting was taken up by discussion surrounding the Josephus Daniels House de-designation. And I will say this special meeting will be taking place on the 24th at 1 p.m. Tanya, I'm assuming that's open to everybody, right?
Yes, it's open to everybody, and it'll get noticed, and you will get a WebEx invite. And it is, as with all of the committee meetings, it is open to the public should anybody, choose to listen, and the link will be placed on the calendar.
So the reason we decided to do that is because we decided that this was important. It might be precedent setting. These issues are probably going to be coming up across the state, and we might be a role model for other places in the state anyway on how we do this. And so we're going to the trouble to have this special meeting to really think about complex issues. And so I hope you will make arrangements to do that on the 24th. You won't have to. You probably don't get to cook a turkey this year anyway, so you got plenty of time for this. Community awareness. Anything from community awareness?
Well, obviously with COVID, there's, we're limited in what we can do. So we've primarily just been focusing on having a strong social media, as well as doing live stream tours at the end of each month of whatever specific historic site we're focusing on for the month. So we're continuing that, and then at our upcoming meeting, we're gonna hopefully discuss maybe some alternative ideas for things we could do in the coming year, still while maintaining social distancing.
Yeah, thank you for that, Justin Williams.
One quick comment. Y'all should know what a good job Heather's doing under difficult circumstances, since we can't really touch each other anymore or get around each other, but she's doing great. And maybe at the December meeting, a short agenda item might be the metrics that Heather gathers from our sites, because metrics mean a lot in this sense. We're gathering people who are watching some of the things we're doing, and I think it's important for the rest of the commissioners to know who's looking at us, so to speak.
I don't know what your meetings used to be like, but I like the phrase, since we can't gather together, that the touching thing, my head came up as soon as you said it. So anyway, but thanks for all you're doing. And Heather, you're doing a great job on your paying job too. So we're really glad to have you, and glad that Raleigh has you too.
Oh, guys.
All right, now Lustron, Tanya, have those folks from Greensboro stepped forward or stepped away or what?
I have not heard anything recently. No.
The last that we had was these were still interested in looking at it We did take the next step as far as getting to where we would have some money that we might be able to help them with financing. And the other thing we're doing is setting up another meeting. The listing agreements have expired, and we're setting up another meeting with PNC to think about what's the best way forward on that property, trying to keep that moving as well. COA, there's no November meeting, and for December we actually have so many files. We're having the usual meeting, and then we're having to double up with another meeting where we start in the morning and go as long as necessary to catch up a long list of applications, and so we're plenty busy there. Dorothea Dix Park, Tony, is there anything to say on that, or is the problem that we need to have the committee schedule a meeting so we can see what we're supposed to be doing and do it?
We still need to schedule a meeting. I've not forgotten, but I was doodle polling y'all a whole lot last week, so I took a little break, but we do need to schedule a meeting.
All right, well, I think that that project is on the move, and I think we better go ahead and do that doodle poll if we can. Nominations, Kay, anything you want to say?
No, just as you can see from the meeting schedule, we will begin meeting in January. So if you have any recommendations of people you'd like to encourage to apply, we're in particular need of somebody who lives in a local historic district or a local landmark property. We will need to put somebody in that category on in our next group of people.
All right, so we'll have some folks rotating off, and so y'all, we certainly need to be aware of that. And while we think about that on the retreat or on items that we need to look at, Tanya, let's don't forget to see about looking at those bylaws while I'm still around here to maybe help. That will be useful to think. I think we need to have a look.
Absolutely, that's definitely on the list. There are some changes I've already had, and then with the new general statutes, the code dealing with planning, including preservation, has changed. So we've got a lot to clean up.
Okay. All right. Is there anything else from staff that we need to be doing? There's a lot more items on the agenda, but are the things that we need to highlight from other organizations or anything?
Well, before I forget, I did want to just point out that it has not been scheduled yet, but I anticipate today's city council meeting that the joint hearing for the Daniels dedesignation and the name change for the Haywood House will likely be at the January 5th evening meeting for city council. So go ahead and mark your calendars. I will know later today if that actually happens. And for the events, I just would point out that the Wake Bus Rapid Transit project that is going on, they're having a virtual open house all month. And that does, staff is paying attention to that project and working with planning staff. But the projects do go through a little bit of Oakwood and also the Oakwood Gardens district. So y'all may want to take a look at that and proffer any opinions as individuals. And that's all I wanted to point out.
Anything from members of the commission? I'm not seeing anybody move. Travis, you need any help changing diapers or anything? You're still mute and you're still asleep. So anyway, I guess things are going well in that department. Okay, folks, with that, and if nothing else, I'll declare the meeting adjourned, and thank you all for everything that you are doing. I looked at the faces on this screen, and we we really couldn't do what we're doing without each one of you, what you know, who you know, and your skill set. And so thank you for your service. See you all later. Enjoyed it. Have a good morning.
Bye, everybody.
Bye now.
Have a good weekend.
Thank you.